Hi, welcome to Bonds After Baby. I'm LMFT Evie Empress, and I'm here to help you and your family relationships experience more relief and connection during the stage of pregnancy, postpartum, and early parenthood. Remember to subscribe for my podcast here and on YouTube, and sign up to my email list on website bondsafterbaby.com for free resources for your family. This is the next episode in a series focusing on mindset shifts, how our mindset or perspectives can make things harder or easier in our relationship functioning in pregnancy and early parenthood. In today's episode, the mindset shift I'll be discussing is realistic expectations of relationships while you're in survival mode. It's hard. And I'll be offering lots of concrete tips on how to stay close while in this kind of parent survival mode. Because what's going to happen in your relationship if your expectations of one another just aren't possible or realistic? It's basically setting you and your loved ones up to be disappointed, and everyone starts getting the message that nothing's ever good enough. We just start relating to a fantasy instead of being present with reality, the reality that we're in and that our loved ones are in. It's usually unintentional, but it's very cruel to ourselves and others to be set up to kind of unrealistic standards, because it's basically setting people up to feel like they're not enough and that we're not enough. It's very loving to offer grace to ourselves and each other, and to make that kind of grace an act of love, an intentional act of love in the relationship, while still getting some needs met. While I usually touch on multiple family relationships, I'm going to focus on couple relationships and co-parenting relationships specifically today. Again, this is a really good one to listen to with your partner. So, how to stay close while in survival mode, how to feel loved and to express love when your reserves are very low. Now, I know my listeners here must be in very different kinds of relationships with varying levels of relating with one another and connecting. For some of you, just hearing these tips together could open up new ways of being with one another with a lot of ease. For some, it just may stimulate more discussion and curiosity. And for others, it may kind of show what big blocks there are and walls to giving or receiving loving gestures, which can point to needing more help. Either way, these are important mindset shifts, to be aware of. And I have a lot of tips to get through the thick of it with your partner. So, the first and most important is face reality together. Acknowledge to yourself and with your partner the stage of life or period you are in. Share compassion with one another. I know sometimes we don't want to face the reality of how hard things are because it can be scary, and because we may want to avoid really uncomfortable feelings like immense grief. But avoiding a reality that you and your partner share can build walls between you, and you end up experiencing the same thing but on separate islands. If one person feels appreciated and acknowledged for what they're going through, it's often very softening and become reciprocal. So basically, like, the person wants to give back the same grace that they've gotten. And this is a way in which you can start sharing the experience, acknowledging what's happening and sharing the compassion. And instead of two people on islands, it becomes two people in it together, which again is very soothing and comforting in a time where you're stressed out. Okay. So I'll start by saying, resist doing a suffering Olympics, where you start comparing and competing about who is going through more. I bet this is really familiar to many of you. We all can get in this loop. Like, oh, you may have gotten 2 more hours of sleep, but my sleep was completely broken the whole night because the noises on the monitor were waking me up. Who had more hours juggling the children, who had a rougher week at work, etc. The urge to compete or elevate your own struggle over your partner's often stems from anger about not experiencing a recognition or gratitude for what you're going through. And when we go through hard times, again, it's an act of love for our experience to be acknowledged by those we're closest to. Tune into your body as I give these 2 examples of a scenario. Okay, just imagine, connect with the tension in your body, your reaction. So imagine you have an incredibly rough day. There's 1 more hour till bedtime. It's been an exhausting slog the whole day. You're barely hanging on. You're at your wit's end. And your spouse or partner comes up to you and says, well, at least you got a few more hours of sleep than I did last night. Or, Oh man, I'm so sorry today was awful. The kids hung you out to dry today, didn't they? I see how hard you're trying when it all feels so impossible and miserable. I'm sorry. Okay. Did you notice physically feeling the difference at those two responses? When you hear a response like the second one, where you are given grace and acknowledged and just get some compassion, do you notice how much more inclined you'd be to also acknowledge how much your partner's going through too? I have seen this live in front of me in sessions so often that when one partner gives that kind of grace of like, oh man, I know I've seen exactly what you're going through. I'm so sorry you're going through it in whatever shape or form. And I will see the other partner immediately be like, "Oh my God, I know, and you too." And and they start going back and forth, and it's really lovely to see. It's just like, oh, okay, I feel seen too, and I want you to feel the same way. And it becomes this really lovely feedback loop to each other. And it goes both ways, okay? So, can you and your partner just acknowledge that it's hard for both of you in different ways and that there's enough space for compassion for both? In every single couple I've sat with, I've observed this unconscious belief that only one person's experience can be acknowledged, and that one person's experience is like a threat to the other, and there isn't space for both. But that's just not true. Now, there is a caveat that's important because sometimes the urge to compete or elevate your own struggle over your partner's stems from anger about unfairness that goes unspoken. And instead of speaking directly about the issue you want to address, it comes out sideways in a passive aggressive or roundabout way in this kind of suffering Olympics thing. So, if there's a genuine imbalance and something feels truly unfair to you or your partner or both, this means something needs to be worked out. While it's lovely to give and receive grace, it's important also to check in with yourselves honestly about whether something doesn't sit right. And when there is something to be dealt with, it's also dependent on your reserves and what's going on to see whether it's the best time to deal. Obviously, there's a range of situations that fall under survival mode, right? Where it can be just that everyone's stretched thin with a few, 2 or 3 difficult weeks, or it can be, 4 months postpartum period of sheer exhaustion, or it could be something like a death in the family or cancer treatments while raising small kids. Sometimes putting discussions on brief holds or finding the best time when there's more capacity to be regulated to have these discussions is wise. It's just important that these issues don't fester for too long or get passed over. I mentioned in the last episode about conflict getting avoided and why that can be so damaging. So there can be a commitment to deal with conflict, but not always in the moment it comes up, the second it comes up. There can be grace when people are feeling over their limit. And here's some more suggestions when the survival mode leaves you in a state that's just different than regular functioning levels, okay? I know I've mentioned this, before, but I'm probably going to keep having this caveat too. If you are closer to the postpartum stage, please, both of you, acknowledge the physical and hormonal recovery and the sheer exhaustion while meeting constant demands during this time. This is not a time to expect from yourselves or partners regular functioning, and it requires much tenderness, sensitivity, and protectiveness. Okay? In all stages, start questioning whether you have expectations that are no longer realistic in this phase of life. What are realistic expectations for connection and intimacy when there's limited bandwidth? Can there be more flexibility about what connection looks like? It doesn't have to look the same. Your family is evolving, and kind of the coping mechanisms need to evolve too. Remember that small gestures don't require a lot of time and energy. Okay, so here are some examples of small expressions of intimacy and connection. And I'm going to ask you again to just tune in to how your body feels when you imagine receiving any of these gestures. Okay? Your partner comes and slowly rubs you on the shoulder and gives you a warm smile. Your partner comes and says, "I love watching you play with her. She loves her dad so much." While the kids are acting out, your partner gives you a secret glance with a laugh and says, "We got this." Your partner comes and says, "He's so lucky to have you as a mom." Your partner comes and gives you a playful tickle with an impish smile. Your partner caresses your neck while you watch TV. Notice how you felt when I read these out, imagining this happening, okay? These moments are like 30 seconds, a few minutes, but they also function as reassurance, right? To show that you're in this together and that you care about how one another feels, right? Let me give a brief overview of what your relationship can commit to during survival mode. Can you and your partner commit to acknowledging realities about your current stressors and bandwidth? Can you name some more realistic expectations and recognize that old expectations may not have been realistic at this time? Can you acknowledge that there's enough space for both of your suffering? Can you stop competing and start offering mutual compassion? And finally, can you commit to offering gestures of warmth and togetherness, even in little 30-second, 1-minute spurts throughout the day, between meetings, right? Before sleep? If so much hostility has built up to the point where any of this is hard to commit to, it may be a sign that couples therapy is necessary. I hope this was helpful for you. We all know how hard it is in survival mode, and I'm here for you and your family. If you want all the resources at your fingertips, I'll be offering freebie goodies in the near future. Sign up for my email list at bondsafterbaby.com to get the goods, and subscribe to my podcast and YouTube channel, Bonds After Baby, so you get notified when there's a new episode. Bye. See you next week.